So a Buddhist, Chan Buddhist, Zen kind of practice is what's called Jisei, or death poetry. And I find it most helpful for me to understand it, access it, relate to it even, if I consider that the people that wrote it or write it are quite accomplished, right? So they're long-time practitioners, they're heads of the monastery, they're, sainted or something like that, they're bodhisattva. That's probably not very true. There's probably a lot of people that write it. But I rather think that if I consider it as though this is a very accomplished, maybe nearly awakened person that wrote this, or maybe even awakened, it's much easier for me to access the wisdom that's there. And maybe that's me assigning wisdom where it isn't because they're not as accomplished, right? So if I was to say to myself, well, I'm going to just look at the birds, I might enjoy some tea watching the birds. But if I was to say, what lessons will come from the birds today? I might the way I approach it might be more fruitful than if I just watch the birds, although it's fine just to watch the birds. Mm-hmm. So it may not be that the birds literally said, let me go show this guy a lesson. But if I look at them as if they're enlightened, I'll probably see lessons. So that's how I tend to look at it. And I think, in fact, that's the case. Many of the people that write them that come to us are, in fact, long-time practitioners. So the idea would be that the practitioner, so we'll call it the monk, let's say, or nun, she will, on her deathbed, write a poem, right? Mm-hmm. Now, when you're on your deathbed, it's very unlikely that you can know the moment, the hour that you're going to transition. But you're not going to see next summer. You're not going to see maybe next week, right? Like, you're on your deathbed. You're not ordering a deathbed, waiting for them to deliver it, because you're going to need it soon. You're calling your family in, that sort of thing. And so you write a poem then. Now, you may write the poem that just expresses your experience, or what you see out your window, or a memory. It might be a sort of consciously purposeful writing about, here's an understanding I have, a learning that I'd like to transmit, right? And it may also be that you're literally just writing about what you see out the window. But when that person in that moment writes about what they see about their window, they are transmitting their learnings, right? Whatever they write about, they're writing about the mind and the life and humanity and the world. Like, they can't not, right? And that's why I say it's very helpful for me to come at it with this presumption that they are purposefully writing to teach. They may not be purposefully, but I would argue that they necessarily do teach in every death poem. So when the death poem is written, it will be brief, right? So you might think like a haiku or something. Mm-hmm. It doesn't have to follow that stricture, but it'll be brief. Why? Well, I may have other things to do on my deathbed, like sleep, or answer questions, or try and take fluids, or pray, or meditate, or whatever it might be. I also very likely don't have the energy to write an ode, an epic poem. I can just get a few things out. But it might also be that on your deathbed, not the one that you and I envision now, because it's purely intellectual for us, but if you're actually there, the clarity that's available to you on your deathbed particularly if you're an accomplished person, because then you accept the clarity. You don't fight for details or extraneous features. You just realize it's all this simple, right? Everything comes down to so much less than you've thought has been the minimum. If you're accomplished and on your deathbed. And so you likely wouldn't need to write much. Like the littlest amount says everything or much. So you recognize that sparseness, that elegance is sufficient. Right? So you may not have the energy or the time, but you also likely have the clarity of the truth of actual clarity. And so there's no need to write more. Mm. So a death poem might be something that the person writes for who follows. Like, this is for my students, this is for other people that study what I study, this is for my children, my children's children. Might be. And it might just be like, I'm dying, I'd like to spend my time writing, expressing myself with a calligraphy brush or something. Mm. But again, if I look at it through the lens of presuming that they're accomplished, I'm able to perceive that everything is a conscious teaching. It needn't have actually been conscious, but I can perceive the lessons there. Mm-hmm. And I would argue they necessarily have lessons. So is the person writing to pass on this, like, here's my last words, here's my summation of life, here's my summation of the mind, here's my final recognition of all realization, here's what it all has meant, right? And it could just be like they're describing the bird out the window, but then the way they describe that bird out the window sums up everything, right? Mm-hmm. So your ability to receive that poem can alter what is contained within the poem, which I would argue is more than the words seem to be able to bear. So the poem is perhaps for somebody, perhaps not. Perhaps short, I guess perhaps not, but generally very short. Perhaps intentionally teaching, perhaps not, but again, always teaching. And this is the important part, I think. The death poem is not edited. So if you were to write even a shopping list, you're going to edit it before you go shopping. If you were to write a poem, you're likely going to edit it before you show anybody. Maybe a lot of stress and time and erasers before you publish it or share it or don't throw it out or something. And you might do that with a letter to somebody or an email. You might do it with something you're going to submit, an article somewhere, a paper for school, a poem. Doesn't really. A lot of times we'll edit our own things, our words, before. Let me think this through. Or the next day, when I said that, I'm sorry about that. This is the word I should have used. Now, what is editing? Editing is a luxury of time. It's a luxury afforded by time. What do you not have in your deathbed? Time. So, no editing. You simply state a truth about existence. Of course, it's your perspective on it, but we might really value that because of your accomplishments. So if I was to say to you, write a poem, but you don't get to edit it, you might say, well, let me just really think a lot before I put a pen down. But then you're editing. It's just not ink. But then you're presuming time, which probably you can now. You're a healthy person. You probably can presume the time. And there's nothing wrong with that normally. But that's not really a death poem, is it? A death poem is, right, when? Now. Why? You're going to die. Now. Well, hang on, let me collect. No. You've always gotten to do that. Now you don't. Pen, paper, write. But there's nothing in... Wait, I haven't learned everything. No. Now. right? Not that somebody's making somebody do it the way I just described it, but that I'm sort of describing it extrinsically as your own urge. Like, without editing, a very short amount that I would argue necessarily is teaching, and it sums up everything. The wonderful thing I found about a death poem is that when you read the death poem, it might be about a sparrow landing on a holly bush in the winter sun. I don't know, something like that. And it is everything in life, right? That is encompassing sublimely and profoundly everything. And then you read another death poem that doesn't mention the sparrow or the holly bush or the sunlight or the season. It mentions water dripping from a tea kettle neck. And you have the same, that's everything. You've, like, somehow something entirely different than something else has also contained everything, as if they're droplets refracting the same rainbow, different droplets in a sea of mist, you know. So to me, it's an exquisitely beautiful practice to say, I'm writing this for somebody, because if I'm writing, it's to be read by somebody. I might address it to them and hand it to them. I might just write it, I die, I don't know what happens. But I won't be there to receive their reception of it. I won't be there to ensure that the person I wrote it to sees it, or if anybody indeed cares. So it's a one-way communication. It's not, normally a writer might expect some dialogue. Hey, I read your poem, it's not really for me. Hey, I sent it to my friend who publishes. Hey, I love this phrase you use, or whatever whatever you do. Same with an email, same with a shopping list. Somebody at home might say, oh, I don't really want potatoes again. Can we get, oh, okay. You know, like, it gets edited. There's a dialogue in communication, but a death poem is not a dialogue. It's a final monologue. Right? That makes sense?
It does make sense.
So